It was 6:15 a.m. on a beautiful Tuesday morning, the kind of perfect moment that makes you grateful to be alive. Then I heard the helicopters. Not one helicopter. 3 of them circling overhead like I was some kind of escaped convict. Then came the sound that made my blood run cold, the roar of multiple engines racing down my private road. Through the trees I could see black vehicles approaching fast, kicking up clouds of dust. I'm sitting there in my old fishing hat and pajamas, holding a cup of coffee in one hand and a fishing rod in the other, when suddenly my peaceful morning exploded into chaos. 6 black SUVs came screaming into my driveway, followed by an armored vehicle that looked like something from a war zone. Men in full tactical gear poured out, automatic weapons drawn, shouting commands at me like I was a terrorist. Drop the weapon. Get on the ground now. I nearly fell off my dock chair. Weapon? It's a fishing rod. Get down. Get down. Hands where we can see them. I'm 72 years old with arthritis in both knees, trying to figure out how I went from catching base to being surrounded by a SWAT team. The lead officer, face hidden behind tactical gear, pointed his rifle at me and screamed, "You're under arrest for illegal fishing in protected waters." My name is Frank Patterson, and I'm a retired auto mechanic who spent 45 years fixing cars and raising a family in this small Michigan town. What I'm about to tell you happened 3 weeks ago, and it's a story about entitled rich people, abuse of power, and what happens when bullies pick the wrong fight with the wrong family. Let me back up and tell you how this nightmare began. 20 years ago, my late wife Margaret and I bought this beautiful 150-acre property surrounding Crystal Lake. Not just a house by the lake, we bought the entire lake. Every drop of water, every fish swimming in it, every lily pad floating on the surface. I have the original deed that proves it, signed and notarized, crystal clear ownership. Margaret and I built our dream retirement home right on the water's edge. She loved watching me fish from the kitchen window while she made breakfast. We spent countless evenings on that dock, her reading romance novels while I cast for base, planning all the things we'd do in our golden years together. When Margaret passed 4 years ago after her battle with cancer, those morning fishing sessions became my way of staying connected to her memory. Every sunrise, I'd sit in the same spot, drink coffee from the mug she bought me for our 40th anniversary, and feel her presence in the gentle lap of waves against the dock. For 16 years it was paradise. Then everything changed when Riverside Estates was built. 3 years ago, a big city developer bought the farmland across the lake and built a luxury subdivision. Houses starting at $1.2 million, designed for wealthy retirees and rich city folks looking for their piece of country living. McMansions with 3-car garages, perfectly manicured lawns, and boat docks that cost more than most people's houses. At first, I didn't mind the new neighbors. More people meant better security and the property values went up. Some of them were even friendly, waving when they saw me fishing in the early morning. But then came the Homeowners Association. And with it came Victoria Blackwood. Victoria Blackwood was everything I'd learned to avoid in my 7 decades on this earth. New money, old attitude, and the kind of entitlement that comes from never being told no in your entire life. Her husband ran some tech company in Chicago, and they'd bought the biggest house in Riverside Estates for $1.8 million cash. Within 2 weeks of moving in, she'd gotten herself elected HOA president. Within a month, she was at my door. I was working in my garage when I heard her Mercedes SUV crunch up my gravel driveway. She stepped out wearing clothes that probably cost more than my monthly pension, designer sunglasses, and the kind of smile that wealthy people use when they're about to demand something from you. "Mr. Patterson," she called out in a voice like silk wrapped around steel, "I'm Victoria Blackwood, president of the Riverside Estates Homeowners Association. We need to discuss your activities on our lake." I wiped my greasy hands on a rag and walked over. "Our lake? Well, the lake that serves our community. I'm sure you understand." "Actually, I don't understand. This is Crystal Lake. I own it. Have for 20 years. Her smile flickered but didn't disappear. "Oh, I think there might be some confusion about property rights and water access laws. It's quite complex, really." I pulled my deed from the house and showed it to her. Clear as day, Crystal Lake in all water rights including fishing, boating, and recreational use. She barely glanced at it. "Mr. Patterson, property law has evolved significantly since you purchased your land. Environmental regulations, community access rights, noise ordinances, it's not as simple as it used to be. What exactly are you trying to say?" "I'm saying that your daily fishing activities are disrupting our community's peaceful enjoyment of the lake. The noise from your boat engine at sunrise, the disturbance to wildlife, the general, rustic atmosphere you create, it's affecting our property values." I stared at her. You're complaining about me fishing on my own lake? I'm asking you to be considerate of your neighbors. Perhaps you could limit your fishing to certain hours, use a quieter boat, maybe coordinate with the HOA board to ensure your activities don't conflict with community events. Lady, I've been fishing this lake since before your subdivision was even an idea in some developer's head. I'll be fishing it long after you move back to whatever city you came from. Her mask of politeness finally cracked. Mr. Patterson, I represent 38 homeowners who've invested over $40 million in lakefront properties. We will not allow one stubborn old man with an outdated lifestyle to destroy our investment. Get off my property. This conversation isn't over. She was right. It was just beginning. 2 weeks later, I found a certified letter in my mailbox from the county environmental office. The Riverside Estates HOA had filed a formal complaint alleging that I was operating an unauthorized commercial fishing operation that was disrupting the natural ecosystem balance of Crystal Lake. The letter listed 14 separate violations. Commercial fishing without permits, selling fish to local restaurants, using unauthorized bait that attracted invasive species, or operating a boat motor during protected wildlife nesting hours, disturbing migratory bird habitats, violating noise ordinances, trespassing on community water resources, or operating without proper insurance, failure to comply with environmental impact assessments. Every single allegation was a complete lie. I catch and release. Always have. I don't sell fish, I barely keep any for myself. But lies typed on official government letterhead can cause real problems for an old man living on a fixed income. I called the environmental office. A nervous-sounding clerk named Danny told me the HOA had submitted extensive photographic evidence and witness statements documenting my violations. Mr. Patterson, you're looking at potential fines up to $50,000 and possible criminal charges for operating without proper permits. Son, I fish for relaxation. I throw 90% of what I catch back in the water. I understand, sir, but we have to investigate all complaints. You'll need to appear at a hearing next month and bring documentation proving you're not engaged in commercial fishing. How do you prove a negative? How do you document that you're not doing something? But Victoria wasn't done escalating. The next week, she played her trump card. I was on my dock at dawn, same as every morning for 20 years, when I heard car doors slamming. Through the morning mist, I could see 2 county sheriff's deputies walking down my dock. Mr. Patterson? The younger deputy called out. I'm Deputy Williams. We need to talk to you about your fishing activities. What about them? We've received complaints that you're engaged in commercial fishing without proper licensing. Also reports of aggressive behavior toward community members trying to use the lake. I nearly laughed. Aggressive behavior? I wave good morning to folks when they're out in their boats. The older deputy, whose name tag read Martinez, looked uncomfortable. Sir, we have witness statements saying you've threatened people, used profane language, and deliberately tried to interfere with their lake activities. That's all lies. Maybe so, but we need to document this. Can we see your fishing license? I showed them my valid recreational fishing license, issued by the state of Michigan, good for another 8 months. Deputy Williams examined it carefully. This is for recreational fishing only. The complaints suggest you're operating commercially. Based on what evidence? Photographs of you fishing multiple times per week, early morning hours that suggest commercial operations, and reports of unusual amounts of equipment. I gestured to my simple tackle box, rod holder, and folding chair. This is unusual equipment? Deputy Martinez was clearly skeptical of the complaints, but Williams seemed to be buying into the HOA's story. Mr. Patterson, we're going to need you to limit your fishing activities until this gets sorted out. On my own lake? Until the environmental investigation is complete. After they left, I called my son Michael. I hadn't wanted to drag him into this mess, but things were getting serious. Michael had followed a different path than his old man: college, law school, worked his way up through the sheriff's department over 20 years. He was now the elected county sheriff, responsible for law enforcement across 3 townships. Dad, what's going on? I heard some deputies were out at your place. I explained the whole situation. The fishing complaints, the environmental allegations, the HOA harassment. Michael listened without interrupting, but I could hear his voice getting colder as I talked. Dad, let me look into this. Something doesn't sound right. Son, I don't want you getting in trouble over your old man's problems. It's not about that. If someone's filing false reports and wasting county resources on harassment, that's a crime. And if they're doing it to my father, it's personal. 2 days later, Victoria escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. I was having my morning coffee on the porch, not even fishing yet, when I saw a black SUV racing up my driveway. Victoria jumped out, phone pressed to her ear, pointing at my house and talking rapidly. Yes, he's right there on his porch. He has weapons visible and appears to be intoxicated. I think he's dangerous. We need immediate police response. Weapons. I was holding a coffee mug. Intoxicated? It was 6:30 in the morning. She hung up and marched toward my porch. Mr. Patterson, I've called the police. Your threatening behavior has gone too far. What threatening behavior? Yesterday you deliberately drove your boat past our community dock at high speed, creating dangerous wake conditions. You shouted obscenities at children who were swimming. Lady, I haven't had my boat out in 3 days. And I don't use profanity around kids. I have multiple witnesses. You have multiple liars. Her eyes lit up with triumph. And there's the threatening language. I'm documenting everything for the restraining order. She was recording me on her phone, trying to provoke a reaction she could use as evidence. I recognized the tactic. I'd seen enough troublemakers try it with mechanics over disputed bills. I went inside and called Michael again. Son, this woman is trying to set me up. She just called the police claiming I threatened her. Dad, don't say anything else until I get there. And whatever you do, don't let them search anything without a warrant. 20 minutes later, 2 deputies arrived. Same ones as before, Williams and Martinez. They looked even more uncomfortable this time. Mr. Patterson, we have a report of threatening behavior and possible weapons violations. From the same woman who's been harassing me for months? Deputy Martinez sighed. Sir, we have to respond to all calls. Mrs. Blackwood says you threatened her and her family, and that you have weapons on your property. I have hunting rifles in a locked cabinet, same as half the men in this county. And I never threatened anyone. Deputy Williams was taking notes. She says you told her you'd make her regret bothering you. That's a complete fabrication. She has it recorded on her phone. That's when I realized how deep this setup went. Victoria had been planning this escalation, creating a paper trail of false complaints to justify whatever she did next. Deputy Martinez looked genuinely apologetic. Mr. Patterson, I'm going to have to ask you to come down to the station for questioning. Am I under arrest? Not yet, but Mrs. Blackwood is pressing charges for criminal threats and harassment. That's when Victoria played her final card. As the deputies were talking to me on my porch, she made another phone call. 911? I need to report an armed and dangerous individual threatening multiple community members. He's threatened to shoot anyone who interferes with his illegal fishing operation. We need immediate SWAT response. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Armed and dangerous? Threatened to shoot people? This woman was completely unhinged. Deputy Martinez heard her call and immediately got on his radio. Dispatch, this is Martinez. We're on scene with Mr. Patterson. Situation is calm and controlled. Do not send additional units. But it was too late. Victoria had specifically requested SWAT response and claimed there was an active threat to multiple civilians. Once that call goes out, the machinery starts moving. Dad, Deputy Martinez said urgently, you need to get in the house and stay away from the windows. This is about to get very complicated. 30 minutes later, my peaceful morning exploded into the military-style raid I described at the beginning of this story. The SWAT team had been told they were responding to an armed and dangerous individual who had threatened to shoot community members. They came prepared for a standoff with a violent criminal, not a 72-year-old man drinking coffee on his dock. As I was being handcuffed on my own property, surrounded by tactical officers with assault rifles, Victoria stood at the edge of my driveway with a satisfied smile on her face. She'd gotten exactly what she wanted, me arrested, humiliated, and removed from my lake. That's when the white SUV with county sheriff markings came racing up my driveway. The driver's door opened, and out stepped my son Michael in his full sheriff's uniform. 6'2", broad shoulders, 20 years of law enforcement experience, and the kind of quiet authority that makes even SWAT officers pay attention. What the hell is going on here? He demanded, his voice carrying across the chaos. The SWAT team leader, a sergeant named Collins, approached him. Sheriff Patterson, we responded to a report of an armed individual making threats against community members. Michael looked at the tactical officers surrounding his 72-year-old father in handcuffs, then at the woman standing smugly by her Mercedes, then back at Sergeant Collins. Sergeant, the armed individual you're arresting is my father. He's a 72-year-old retired mechanic whose biggest threat to society is catching too many base. Victoria's smile faltered. Sheriff Patterson? You're related to him? Michael turned his attention to her, and his voice dropped to the tone that had made him legendary among criminals in 3 counties. Ma'am, are you the one who called in this SWAT response? Yes, but he threatened my family. He's been harassing our entire community. With what? A fishing rod. He operates an illegal commercial fishing operation and threatens anyone who tries to use the lake. Michael walked over to where I was still handcuffed and helped me to my feet. Dad, you okay? I'm fine, son. Just confused about how fishing in my own lake became a SWAT situation. Michael turned back to Victoria. Your own lake. It's a community resource that serves our development. He doesn't have the right to monopolize it. That's when Michael smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. Ma'am, what's your name? Victoria Blackwood. I'm president of the Riverside Estates HOA. Well, Mrs. Blackwood, let me explain something about property law in this county. My father owns Crystal Lake. Not the access rights, not the recreational rights, he owns the actual lake. Every drop of water, every fish, every lily pad. It's been in our family for 20 years. Victoria's face went pale. That's impossible. You can't own a lake. Michael pulled out his phone and made a call. County Clerk's office? This is Sheriff Patterson. I need you to fax the deed for Crystal Lake property to my location immediately. Yes, the whole lake. Yes, I'm sure. While we waited for the fax, Michael addressed the SWAT team. Gentlemen, I appreciate your rapid response, but you've been used as pawns in a harassment campaign against a private property owner. Please stand down. Sergeant Collins looked embarrassed. Sheriff, we were told there was an active threat. The only active threat here is to my father's constitutional rights. The county clerk's fax arrived within minutes. Michael read it aloud for everyone to hear. Crystal Lake and all water rights, including exclusive fishing, boating, and recreational use, totaling 847 acres of water surface and surrounding wetlands, purchased by Frank and Margaret Patterson, recorded deed number 4472, filed with the county clerk, March 15, 2003. Victoria stared at the document like it was written in a foreign language. But, community access rights, environmental protection. Mrs. Blackwood, my father could drain this entire lake tomorrow if he wanted to. It's his property. You've been filing false police reports, making fraudulent environmental claims, and wasting county resources to harass a private property owner exercising his legal rights. The SWAT officers were packing up their equipment, looking distinctly uncomfortable about being used to intimidate an elderly man on his own property. Michael wasn't done. Let me explain what's going to happen now. First, all charges against my father are dismissed. Second, you're going to personally apologize to every county employee whose time you've wasted with false reports. I don't think I should say anything without a lawyer present. That's probably wise because third, my father is going to decide whether to press charges against you for filing false police reports, abuse of emergency services, harassment, and attempted theft of property rights. Victoria looked around desperately as if searching for support. The SWAT officers were loading their vehicles. The deputies were avoiding eye contact. Even her own Mercedes seemed to be judging her. This isn't over, she said weakly. Michael stepped closer. Ma'am, let me be crystal clear about something. This is absolutely over. If my father receives one more harassment complaint, one more false environmental report, or one more noise ordinance violation that traces back to your HOA, I will personally investigate you for criminal conspiracy, abuse of process, and violation of civil rights under color of law. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you of the legal consequences of continuing to harass a private property owner. There's a difference. After everyone left, Michael and I sat on my dock with cups of coffee, watching the morning sun climb higher over the lake that had caused so much trouble. Dad, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Son, it's not your fault some people think money gives them the right to bully others. What do you want to do about pressing charges? I thought about it for a long moment, watching a great blue heron wade through the shallows near my dock. Let's see if she learned her lesson first. The next morning, I was back on my dock at sunrise, coffee in hand, fishing line in the water. It felt like the most defiant act of my life. Around 8 a.m., I saw Victoria's Mercedes pull into her driveway across the lake. She got out, looked toward my dock, and I could see her on her phone again. Part of me wondered if she was stupid enough to call the police again. 20 minutes later, Deputy Martinez drove up my driveway. I braced myself for another round of harassment. Mr. Patterson, he called out as he walked down to the dock. I just wanted to apologize for yesterday. Not your fault, deputy. You were doing your job. Actually, I wanted to let you know, Mrs. Blackwood called the station again this morning. Complained that you were aggressively fishing and intimidating the community with your presence. I sighed. What did you tell her? Deputy Martinez grinned. I told her that fishing on your own property isn't a crime, and that if she calls with any more frivolous complaints, she'll be charged with abuse of emergency services. How'd she take that? About as well as you'd expect. She demanded to speak to my supervisor. And? My supervisor is Sheriff Patterson. Your son. She hung up pretty quick after that. That afternoon, I got a call from a lawyer representing the Riverside Estates HOA. Not Victoria's personal lawyer, the HOA's attorney. Mr. Patterson, this is James Morrison from Morrison, Klein & Associates. I represent the Riverside Estates Homeowners Association. What can I do for you? I'm calling to discuss a possible resolution to the recent misunderstanding regarding Crystal Lake. What kind of resolution? The HOA board has reviewed the situation and would like to offer a formal apology for any inconvenience you may have experienced. I almost laughed. Inconvenience? Your client had SWAT officers point rifles at me on my own property. Yes, well, there seems to have been some miscommunication about the nature of the complaints filed against you. Miscommunication? Or outright lies? Long pause. Mr. Patterson, the HOA would like to make this right. We're prepared to offer compensation for your trouble, and we'd like to discuss a possible agreement that would benefit everyone involved. What kind of agreement? Well, given that you own the lake, perhaps there's a way we could formalize recreational access for our residents. A licensing agreement that would provide you with regular income while allowing our homeowners to enjoy the water. Now that was interesting. How much income? We were thinking $5,000 per month for exclusive recreational access rights for Riverside Estates residents. $60,000 a year to let rich people use my lake. That would more than double my pension income. Let me think about it. Of course. And Mr. Patterson? Mrs. Blackwood is no longer serving as HOA president. She's stepped down to focus on other interests. The next week, I met with the HOA's new president, a retired teacher named Bill Henderson who seemed like a genuinely decent man. Mr. Patterson, I want to start by apologizing for everything that happened. Victoria got completely out of line, and the board should have reined her in sooner. Apology accepted. We've reviewed your property deed, and it's clear you have every right to use your lake however you see fit. But we're hoping we can work something out that benefits everyone. We negotiated for 2 hours and reached an agreement I could live with. The HOA would pay me $4,000 per month for recreational access rights to Crystal Lake. In return, I'd allow their residents to fish, boat, and swim, with some reasonable restrictions during fish spawning seasons. The contract included a clause that any harassment of me by HOA residents would void the agreement immediately. It also specifically stated that my daily fishing routine was not to be interfered with under any circumstances. Mr. Patterson, there's one more thing. Victoria has been asked to leave the community. Her behavior was completely unacceptable, and several other residents have come forward with complaints about her bullying tactics. Turned out Victoria had been terrorizing other people too. She'd filed noise complaints against a family with young children for excessive laughter in their backyard. She tried to get an elderly man fined for walking his dog during restricted hours. She'd even complained about a veteran's American flag being improperly displayed. The HOA had finally realized they had a problem resident and dealt with it. 6 months later, I'm still fishing my lake every morning. The difference is, now I'm getting paid $4,000 a month for the privilege of sharing it with neighbors who treat me with respect. The new HOA residents are great. They wave when they see me fishing, and some of them have asked for tips on the best spots to catch bass. A few of the kids have started calling me Grandpa Frank and asking to hear stories about the old days. Victoria moved back to Chicago. I heard through the grapevine that her husband divorced her, citing her increasingly erratic and controlling behavior as grounds. Apparently, trying to have your elderly neighbor arrested by SWAT teams doesn't make for a healthy marriage. My son Michael stops by for coffee every few weeks. We sit on the dock, watch the sunrise, and talk about everything except that crazy morning when rich folks thought they could bully the wrong family. Dad, do you ever regret not pressing charges against her? Son, sometimes the best revenge is living well. I'm making $48,000 a year to fish in my own lake, surrounded by people who respect me and my property. Victoria's divorced, disgraced, and back to city life. I'd say justice was served. The best part? Last month, the county environmental office called to apologize for investigating me based on fraudulent complaints. Turns out Victoria had filed similar false reports against 3 other property owners in the county, and all the cases were being dismissed. The environmental officer, a young woman named Sarah, was embarrassed. "Mr. Patterson, I'm so sorry we put you through that investigation. The complaints were completely fabricated." "How could you tell?" "Well, for one thing, she claimed you were selling fish to restaurants. But when we called the restaurants she named, none of them had ever heard of you. She also submitted photographs of evidence that were clearly taken at a different lake entirely." Victoria had been so determined to get me in trouble that she'd resorted to outright fraud, complete with fake evidence and false witnesses. These days, Crystal Lake is peaceful again. I fish every morning at sunrise just like I have for 20 years. The difference is, now I have neighbors who appreciate what I'm sharing with them instead of trying to steal it from me. Sometimes, when the morning mist is rising off the water and the fish are biting, I can almost feel Margaret sitting beside me, laughing about the whole ridiculous situation. She always said that bullies eventually get what's coming to them. Sometimes you just have to be patient. The lake is full of bass. The coffee tastes better when you're drinking it as a paid consultant instead of a harassed property owner, and my son has become something of a legend in county law enforcement circles as the sheriff who shut down a SWAT raid on his own father. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments, and let me know if you've ever had to deal with entitled neighbors who thought they could push you around. Because this story isn't just about one old man and one lake. This is about standing up to bullies, protecting your rights, and remembering that sometimes the best weapon against entitled people is simply knowing the law and having family who will back you up when push comes to shove. The water runs clear at Crystal Lake these days. Clear enough to see the truth at the bottom, where it's always been, waiting for someone with the courage to bring it to the surface. And that's a fight worth having every single time.